Okay, now we'll start 2B, the Dear Departed Part 2. So you remember last time all these two daughters of Mr. Abel. Abel is the man who they thought was dead on the top, upstairs. And these two daughters were fighting and they were being very nasty. One of the daughters had got the bureau down, all that you remember. And then the whole part 1 ended with Abel coming from the dead. So was Abel a ghost or was Abel real? Let's see now. The Dear Departed-2. Abel comes down. Abel is the father. Two daughters, their sons-in-law, and one granddaughter. These are the characters. So Abel, what's the matter with little Vicky? So he sees Victoria. Victoria is really looking like that. What's the matter with little Vicky? He sees Ben and Mrs. Jordan, his daughter and his son-in-law. What brings you here? And how's yourself, Ben? Abel thrusts his hand at Ben, who skips back smartly and retreats with Mrs. Jordan to a safe distance below the sofa. So he gets frightened. He thinks it's a ghost. Approaching Abel gingerly. Father, is that you? She pokes him with her hand to see if he's solid. So she pokes him with the hand to see if he was really alive or not a ghost. Abel, of course it's me. Don't do that, Melia. What the devil do you mean by this tomfoolery? Tomfoolery means, joking. Mrs. Jordan, you took us by surprise, father. Are you keeping quite well? Abel, trying to catch the word. What? Are you quite well? Hey, I'm right enough, but for a bit of a headache. Looking at Melia. Melia, what the dickens did I do with my new slippers? So remember, they had taken the slippers back. They're stolen actually, the slippers, and he can't find his slippers. Melia, what the dickens did I do with my new slippers? What the dickens is, what the hell? My God, these are just expressions. What the dickens did I do with my new slippers? Mrs. Slater, confused. Aren't they by the hearth, father? Hearth, where you put the fireplace. Abel, I don't see them. Observing Henry trying to remove the slippers. Why? You have got them on, Henry. So he discovers that Henry has taken his slippers. Mrs. Slater, I told him to put them on to stretch them. They were that new and hard. She lies like that. Now Henry. Mrs. Slater snatches the slippers from Henry and gives them to Abel, who puts them on and sits in the armchair. Mrs. Jordan to Ben. Well, I don't call that delicate, stepping into a dead man's shoes in such haste. Victoria runs across to Abel and sits on the floor at his feet. She finally realizes her grandfather is alive. Oh, Grandpa, I'm so glad you're not dead. So she's very happy. Mrs. Slater, in a vindictive, hold your tongue, Victoria. Hold your tongue. She's very frightened that he will find out that they were thinking that he was dead. Abel, what's that? Who's gone dead? He's not understanding anything now. Mrs. Slater loudly, Victoria says she's sorry about your head. She lies again. Abel, thank you, Vicky, but I'm feeling better. Abel, why, Ben? You are in mourning. Now he discovers that Ben, one of his son-in-law, is in mourning, is in black. And Lizzie too, and Melia, and Henry, and little Vicky. Now he notices, who's gone dead? It's someone in the family. He chuckles. He thinks he's cracked a joke. Mrs. Slater, no one you know, father, a relation of Ben's. Someone related to Ben. And what relation of Ben's? His brother. Mrs. Slater lies. Ben to Mrs. Slater, damn it, I never had one. Abel, dear, dear. And what was his name, Ben? Ben at a loss, he crosses to front of the table. Mrs. Slater, right side of the table prompting, Frederick. Mrs. Jordan, left side of the table prompting, Albert. So two names come here. Fred, Isaac. He gets confused. Isaac? And where did your brother Isaac die? In Australia. Abel rising. Well, I suppose you have only been waiting for me to begin tea. I'm feeling hungry. Mrs. Slater taking up the kettle. I'll make tea. Abel, come along now. Sit you down. Let's be jolly. He's a very happy person. Abel sits at the head of the table facing his spectators. So now he has his daughter, a daughter here, sons-in-law and his granddaughter. Abel suddenly recollecting. Hey, Amelia and Henry, what the devil did you mean by shifting my bureau out of my bedroom? Henry and Mrs. Slater are speechless. Do you hear me, Henry? Amelia! He has seen that his bureau, that remember the desk, the cupboard, small one, which was brought down. What bureau was that, Father? The other sister asked, Mrs. Jordan. Abel, why, my bureau, the one I bought. Mrs. Jordan, was it that one, Father? Ah, that's it. Abel says, what's it doing there, huh? A pause. The clock on the mantelpiece strikes 6. Everyone looks at it. Dear, drat me, that isn't my clock too. What the devil's been going on in this house? Slight pause. Ben, well, I'll be hanged. He's very frightened now. Mrs. Jordan, rising, I'll tell you. Now, Mrs. Jordan, the one who came from outside, she rises and says, I will tell you what's been going on in this house, Father. Nothing short of robbery. Mrs. Slater, be quiet, Elizabeth. Mrs. Jordan, I will not be quiet. Oh, I call it double-faced. Henry, now, Elizabeth. She's revealing that, what happened earlier, that they thought that he was dead. Mrs. Jordan, and you too. Are you such a poor creature that you must do every dirty thing she tells you? Abel, rising, thumping his table. Damn it all! Will someone tell me what's been going on? He wants to know what's going on. Mrs. Jordan, yes, I will. I will not see you robbed. Who has been robbing me? Abel asked. The father asked. Mrs. Jordan, Amelia and Henry. They have stolen your clock and bureau. Working herself up, they sneaked into your room like thieves in the night and stole them after you were dead. Shh, quiet, Elizabeth. Henry and Mrs. Slater both together say that. Mrs. Jordan, I will not be stopped after you were dead, I say. After who was dead? He's more confused now. The man, Abel. Mrs. Jordan, you. But I'm not dead, Abel says. Mrs. Jordan, no, but they thought you were. A pause. Abel gazes around at them. Oh, so that's why you're all in black today. You thought I was dead. He chuckles. That was a big mistake. He sits and resumes his tea. That was a big mistake. Sobbing, Father. Mrs. Slater, again acts. She tries to cry and all that. Abel, it didn't take you long to start dividing my things between you. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Since your mother died, I have lived part of the time with you, Amelia, and part with you, Lizzie. Lizzie is the other daughter's name. Well, I shall make a new will. Will means what a person does. He writes something and how after he dies, things have to be divided. So that is called a will in law. Well, I shall make a new will, leaving all my bits of things to whoever I'm living with when I die. How does that strike you? So he says, whoever I'm living with, that person I'll give all my property and everything. Then the second daughter says, Father, it's quite some time you came to live with us again. We'll make you very comfortable. Then Mrs. Slater says, no, he has not been with us as long as he was with you. Mrs. Jordan, I may be wrong, but I don't think Father will fancy living on with you after what's happened today. The taking the bureau, the clock, the golden clock. Abel, it seems to me that neither of you has any cause to feel proud about the way you have treated me. So Abel is very straightforward. He tells his daughters, you don't care about me. It seems to me that neither of you has any cause, any reason to feel proud about the way you have treated me. You have treated me very badly. He says it openly. Mrs. Slater, if I've done anything wrong, I'm sure I'm sorry for it. Mrs. Jordan, and I can't say more than that too. I can't say more than that. Abel, it's a bit late to say it now. Neither of you cared to put up with me. So both of you, though you are my daughters, you didn't care to put up with me, like you to live with me, to adjust to me. Mrs. Slater and Mrs. Jordan, no, Father. Abel, you both say that because what I've told you about leaving my money. Well, since you don't want me, I will go to someone that does. Someone wants me, I'm going to go there. Ben, come Mr. Merriweather, you've got to live with one of your daughters. You can't live alone, you have to live with one of your daughters. The son-in-law says, Ben says that. Abel, I'll tell you what I've got to do. On Monday next, I've got to do 3 things. I've got to go to the lawyer and alter my will, change my will. And I've got to go to the insurance office and pay my premium. And I've got to go to St. Philip's Church and get married. So at 70 he says, I'm going to get married. And obviously Baron Henry, what? Mrs. Jordan, get married? Mrs. Slater, he's out of his senses. Out of his senses means he's gone mad. General consternation. Consternation means confused. Confused feeling is called consternation. C-O-N-S-T-E-R-N-A-T-I-O-N. Abel, I say I'm going to get married. Who to? Mrs. Slater asks, one of the daughters. Abel, to Mrs. John Shorrocks, who keeps the Ringo bells. We have had it fixed up a good while now, but I was keeping it for a pleasant surprise. He rises. I felt I was a bit of a burden to you. So I found someone who would think it a pleasure to look after me. So he has found a friend, a lover, who would be happy to be with him at 70. We shall be very glad to see you at the ceremony. So when I get married, we all can come. He gets to the door. Till Monday then. 12 o'clock at St. Philip's Church. Opening the door. It's a good thing you brought that bureau downstairs, Amelia. It'll be handier to carry it across to the Ringo bells on Monday. So he says, I'm going to carry it to my new house, the Ringo bells. He goes out and the curtain falls. What a lovely drama. Okay, that is the drama by William Stanley Haughton. What a beautiful drama. This is really true. You find in so many houses when somebody dies, the person just dies and then people start talking about dividing the property and then, not directly sometimes, but indirectly. Or even in their mind they have it. How much property he has left, how much I will get, how much he will get. That shows how little feeling we have for our parents. Now that's very sad. And through a beautiful humor, through wonderful wit and extraordinary dialogues, William Stanley Haughton has brought out this beautiful world-class drama called The Dear Departed. And that completes Dear Departed. Now we look at some of the words we have learned. Gingerly, in a careful way, gingerly, very delicately. Poke. I think you know poke. Poke. When you poke somebody, you push somebody. What the devil? It's just an expression. What the devil? What do you mean? What the devil? Tomfoolery. I told you tomfoolery. This is another word we learned. Tomfoolery means just joking. And vindictive whisper. Talking about someone in a harsh, hasty manner. Vindictive. Vindictive means almost like a danger signal, a revenge-like thing. And double-faced. So you have one face, double-faced, which means you keep one thing in your mind and you say something else. That's called double-faced. Cheater. Thumping. Hitting hard on the table or something. Thumping. Will. I explained to you will. When somebody, before dying, you go to a lawyer, especially when you're old, and you make a will. You say that after I die, this will go to him, this will go to him, this property will go to him. All that instructions to the lawyer, to the law, is written in the will. And after he dies, the law takes care to implement the will, to do exactly what was written in the will. And consternation. Consternation is confused, unemotional and skillful. Consternation is confused. You two emotions, very confused. Okay. And finally, handier. It'll be handier. Handy. It's very handy. You can easily handle it. It's very easy to use it. Handier means more easy. So, not very difficult words. And that completes the vocabulary. Now you can read the lesson happily, not once, not twice, but many times. Because every time you read it, you feel so happy, you laugh, and you also feel sad in a strange way. That the world is so funny, the world is so malicious, and the world is so selfish. When actually there should be so much love in the world. So that's what great authors do. They communicate to you a beautiful point about life, and that has been communicated in a witty way, in a humorous way, so beautifully by William Stanley Haughton. This is NRK Academy signing out now with 2B. We'll meet again at 2C. Thank you so much.